you've stumbled across this video, it's probably because it's either 3 a.m. in the morning and you're looking up weird stuff on the internet, or like me and many others out there, you still have half a soul and you love good old school horror. Specifically paperbacks and paperback gems, and that's exactly what we want to talk about. My name is Wolfcockramirez. I live in Australia and I have been drinking tonight, and this is my first attempt at trying to catch up with the technological age, to share and connect with like-minded people about cool ass retro stuff. It's not about being trendy either. Like, this is a genuine love, you know, and I'd like to continue to do more videos and hear from crew if you wish. But either way, if you're here for the right reasons, I'm glad you're here and welcome. I'm not going to do a big long-winded, drawn-out introduction or whatever, but I will just say a couple of things quickly before we get started. First of all, from time to time I may use naughty words like poop and fornication and fuck her right in the pussy. Second of all, I mean, look, if you're going to be offended by that, or you think maybe I'm not verbally articulate enough, or I'm not graceful enough to do book reviews, then fuck off, because this is old school horror. It's meant to be full of blood and guts and monsters and shit. So, moving on. Pretty much how I'm going to go about these videos is I just want to talk about a lot of the, you know, cool old paperbacks that I've read and enjoyed, or, you know, have been a waste of time. Maybe talk a little bit about their authors, a little bit about the plot or the way it was written, but without spoiling anything. It's basically just so that, you know, if you're curious about reading a book, you know, maybe we can find some kind of a way to, I guess, for lack of a better word, maybe motivate you or inspire you to do so, or you might already own these books, or have read them yourself, and you could, you know, you could tell me what you think. But that's basically it. I'm not gonna go any further than that. I'm just gonna chop into it and see how it goes. So bear with me for a second. How I'd like to go about this video, first of all, is gonna break the ice with a super cool author who everybody in the underground paperback world should know, and if you don't know, you've obviously been hiding in a fucking hole somewhere, and that is the man himself, Brian Lumley. I hope you can see that on my grainy camera. I do apologise for the quality of the video, but that just shows that obviously I'm crawling out of a hole myself, but hey, fuck her right in the pussy. Now, this book is fucking cool, right? And the reason why I got onto Brian Lumley was not just because of Necroscope. As anybody should know, Necroscope is one of the best known Brian Lumley books out there. But I got on to this one in specific because of reading this handful of short stories in this little paperback size by Richard Davis, and obviously, as you may or may not be able to see, the year's best horror stories, volume 3, which came out, I think by memory, I'm not going to open it up, I think it came out in the early 70s or the mid 70s at some point. And this has some cool writers in it. It's got not only Brian Lumley, but Ramsey Campbell as well, who's another heavy hitter in the underground. And if you don't know him, or if you're very well aware of him and you own his books, cool. You know, but I read this Brian Lumley story in here. It's pretty much about a journalist who tracks down a oceanographer who's become very recluse from the media over time, and this story pretty much goes about this journalist talking to this oceanographer and him telling a story to him back about the reasons why he has fallen off the face of the earth. And it's because basically he got addicted, right, to getting, here we go, getting sucked on by something they call a hagfish. And it attacked him at first. He got addicted to it, and eventually he grew an appendage, like this living, breathing appendage. And essentially, the result is that he kind of turns into a fish man himself. Very weird story. It's pretty strange, pretty horrifying in ways, but it was cool enough that I thought to myself, well, you know, I've got to get out. I've got to read some Brian Lumley. I know he's pretty renowned as a writer, especially for the period of time. And so I got hold of this, The House of Doors, and what I will say about this book is that it is super cool. It's super imaginative, very imaginative, and very visual. Great for the mind. It's basically like a I don't know, an adventure, you know, fantasy kind of book rooted in horror, because it's Uncle Brian, of course. The House of Doors is basically a giant synthesizer that sucks a group of people in and challenges them all one by one, all together. And every situation they go through, every door they go through, as you can imagine, is like a different world, a different place, a different scenario. And every different door they go through is all based on all of their individual fears, which is pretty cool. And it comes down to aliens, believe it or not. And I'm not going to give away anything much else, but it comes down to aliens that are actually testing the human race to wonder as to whether they can coexist with them, or they just smite them, fuck them off, and then they take over planet Earth for themselves. But super cool read. There is a sequel too, which is really great. I haven't read the sequel yet, but I definitely will one day down the line. What I'll do now, and what I'll do with the following books, is I'll give them a overall story quality rating and a horror rating, and whether they're recommended or not. So this one will start off on the horror meter. Yeah, I'd give it a 5. But on the story meter, in the story quality, it's probably a good 7. So recommended, I would say, if you're not too familiar with Brian Lumley, go on to Necroscope or something to break the ice. You can see what he's all about. You can see where his real success comes from, and then move on to this one. But overall, definitely a recommended book. Alright, moving on. And this is how I'm going to go about it. I'm going to try and move pretty quickly, because I know that in the modern age, everybody's all ADD. I'm guilty of it too. You just want answers, you want results real quick, you fucking cunts. But hey, that's all of us, right? I'm going to move on to this one. Joyce Wolf, White Spider. I read this book. This was actually one of the first full paperbacks I ever read. And I mean, look at it. It's White Spider, and it's got, where is it? It's got a little blurb like, "It's spun a web of ultimate horror." Come on. You know, it's got to intrigue you, right? And I mean, you look at it, you think, man, this is going to be B-grade gold. One thing is, I tried to look into Joyce Wolf, and she's not a very prolific writer at all. I think she's got one other book, but I don't really know anything about it. But anyway, I gave this one a go. It looks super cool. Gave it a read, and it's got everything. You know, it's got the, you know, small town terror vibe going on, you know, weird people, amateur cult activity, nightmares, a whole police forensics side plot to, you know, mysterious deaths that go on as relation to the cult activity. And there's even a dog in there. Of course, you got to have a dog in there, and I think it's a Rottweiler too. You know? So there's a lot going on in this to make it a great horror story. There are a lot of moments where it's as if Joyce, she is making things unnecessarily long-winded in sections of the book, just to kind of meet that, you know, full novel standard. It keeps you going, it keeps you guessing, you know, because you're sitting there thinking, you know, spiders are scary, witchcraft is scary, you know, everybody's dying and there's all this creepy shit going on in this small town, people are getting victimized, it's all cool, you know. They even dropped the C-bomb a couple of times, you know, which is always great. But it goes, it climaxes like any action-packed horror flick would, but the ending, I'm not going to give anything away. For me personally, it doesn't float my boat. I'm pretty particular when it comes to endings, and I'm, like I say, like a broken record, I'm not going to give anything away. Either way, I'll chop it off there. As you see, I'm probably not piecing myself together very well for you, but this book here, on the horror meter, I don't know, maybe at moments, a 6. Story, a 5. Recommended, it's whatever floats your boat. Yeah, it's alright, I'm not dumping on the book at all. But, you know, it's good to have in the collection nonetheless. You know, it's one of those, it's probably a staple in the obscure underground of, you know, random old horror, sci-fi, fantasy, paperbacks, whatever. So, if you see it, I'd say buy it. You know, if you want to read it, give it a go. You know, see what you think. Anyway, moving on. Now, first, we want to move on to another one of the bigger players, and I'll do this quite often. I'd like to do this in future episodes. You always have some of the big players from the underground scenes, because that's what it's all about, right? Here's a bloke that everybody should know about, and he is, if you can see that, Graham Masterton, the man Graham Masterton. And that's not me on the cover. I'm a fucking wolf. That's a coyote. And Coyote is the main, let's say, bad guy predator in this story. And Coyote comes from, you know, old American Indian folklore and legends and things like that, you know, obviously as a form of a demon, which Graham Masterton, as you may know, he's pretty good at bringing the American Indian thing into his horror stories. You can look into him. He's got a lot of great stuff out there. He's very worthy of being recognised in the field of old school paperbacks. This story it's pretty good. It's pretty pacey. As you can see, it's like a pocket size. You'll get through it pretty quick if you wish. It's like first person. It's told first person by the main character. I think his name is John Hyatt, and it's pardon me, fuck her right in the pussy. And I think it's set in San Francisco, and it's pretty much about Coyote, who's an ancient beast who's been laying dormant for a long time, and he wants to remanifest himself piece by piece, like limb by limb, through trying to possess, you know, whether it's people or household items, whatever he's got to do to get the people, get the household items into one place at one time so he can bring himself back together. And obviously you've got a whole bunch of characters in there who have got to, you know, fight the evil and destroy him and prevent him from, you know, taking over the world and getting a whole bunch of minions with him and just terrorizing and obliterating everything. But the problem with this story was, I guess, you know, you're going to get somebody like Coyote. He's going to come along and he's going to You know, he's going to take over the city. He's going to kill everybody. He's going to wreak havoc. He's going to cause terror. But what for? You know, to cause a, you know, to have nothing but a steaming pile of shit, you know, with flies buzzing around it, and that's his kingdom now that he's taken over planet Earth. But, you know, I'm looking way too far into it. Come on, it's horror. It's all about blood and guts and monsters and shit, you know. Throw the logic and the practicalities out of it, right? You know. Anyway, I'll be quick. This book, horror factor. There are some cool moments in it. I will not lie. This is not Graham Masterton's best effort, but he is definitely worth looking into. If you're not familiar, and I'll use that word from time and time again. Sorry, I'm drunk. Alright. Horror factor, horror meter, righty. Probably a 5. I'm always looking for, like, you want that horror meter that's up there. It's like an 8, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10, a 50, whatever. I know they're probably out there, and I hope that some people could, you know, write some comments or whatever, and, you know, give me some suggestions. Maybe I own the books, and, you know, maybe I don't, and maybe I can read something that'll give me a horror meter that's of a fucking 20 or a 50. But this one, horror meter 5, story, probably a 6, recommended. You know, go and get other Graham Masterton. You know, this is all right, but, you know, he's a lot more worthy of praise than what this specific booklet would provide, I guess. All right, moving on. Now, because the last couple of books that I've just talked about kind of dumped on a little bit, you know, even though they were good and I did enjoy them, but as a result of, you know, not being too friendly towards the previous couple of stories, I'm gonna end this video for now with one more book that I do highly that I do hold up there with some of the greats. And here it is. Here she is. You can see that. Dana Reid, Sister Satan. Now, this one here, if you've read it or you haven't, or you know Dana Reid, she's got some cool stories out there. She's well known for, I think she put out like Demon Within and The Gatekeeper, which I happen to own both those books. It was pretty cool. This was the first Dana Reid book that I read, and I've got to be honest, I really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed this book. I think it's, I'll double check with you, but I think this book came out maybe like 87, 88. Oh God, 84, way off. The magic year. Anyways, this book is really cool. It's basically about, there's a family, right? And they happen to hold powers, like every family does. They hold some kind of mental powers, as you do. And with these powers, they can either be psychic or telepathic, or they can achieve things for good or bad. You know, but it takes them obviously a lot of focus and a lot of practice and experience to be able to gain these powers and achieve and grasp and have what they want. So in this case, in the family, we've got a young daughter in her teens, and her name is Lauren. And she really, really wants a sister, right? She really wants a sister. And so eventually, she actually gets herself a sister, right? Through incantation. And the sister is like basically a mirror image of her. It's like her double. But of course, she's fucking evil. Didn't see that one coming. You know? And and the sister's name is Lauren. Her name's not Lauren, her name's Rachel. And Rachel does a lot of nasty stuff. Like, there are moments in this book where I almost thought to myself, like, wow, this is really grisly. super cool, you know, grisly. It's super cool. I mean, it's what you want. It's really what you want. Some very violent, very dark shit happens in this book. But there's a lot more going on to it, a lot more that evolves as the story goes on, with some great character development and things that you will not see coming, or things that I personally did not see coming. Now, I'm going to give something away to elaborate on that a little bit more, is that they get rid of her, of course. They get rid of Rachel, that is the demon spawn. And how they get rid of her was a little bit disappointed. I'm going to spoil this one because it's not the end of the story. Rachel's demise. It's not the end. So basically, they reverse the spell, and she goes back down into the pits of hell. You know, and so that was a little bit disappointing to find out that, you know, it was after all the pain and suffering and horror that she brought upon people that they could just get rid of her just like that. You know, but there's so much more that happens in this book later on. There's an epic climax, okay? A climax that, you know, you've got a good climax when you are feeling for the characters and you are sucked right into the pages. You're turning, the old page turner, you know, and you've got that fear in you. You've got that tension in you. You know you've got a good climax when you feel that. And that's what this book has, okay? So there are some really good curveballs in this story, and I personally think that Dana Reid is epic at what she does. I'm very happy to own her books. I'm very happy that she's done what she's done. And yeah, Sister Satan. It is on the horror meter. I'd probably give it a 7, a good 7. And the story, equal a good 7. Recommended, fucking yeah, recommended. If you get it, if you see it, you're not going wrong. Alright, cool. Now, I know I haven't talked about that many stories tonight, but I'd like to do a lot more videos in the future. And plus, I am hanging for a cigarette. So, I'd like to say cheers for stopping by. I'm not going to do the whole subscribe to my shit, click like, follow me on fuckbook or whatever. You know, I don't have it, you know. So I'll just say cheers for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I would like to hear from anybody if they've read any of these books that I've talked about, or they've got any suggestions on rad books to read and get hold of. You know, I've got a lot of shit back here. You know, like this bookshelf here, what you can see, there's not a lot of width to it, but it's about 1 meter deep. There's a lot going on back there that we can't see. You know, so you might suggest something to me, and I may own it, and you'll compel me to read it. Or I've hopefully maybe compelled you to read one of the books that I've talked about tonight. There will be more to come, whether you like it or not, fuck ya. But until then, cheers cunts, and we'll be seeing you around the traps for more blood, guts, and monsters, and B-grade paperback gems. Alright.